Quarantine Reflections. Finding meaning and a routine. The world is in full quarantine. That's not breaking news, but I find it amazing. Every time I think back to the start of the year, we truly couldn't have seen this coming. The start of the year just 4 months ago, let alone this time last year. A lot can change really quickly. The question is, how malleable and open to change are we? How much of our lives rely on things outside of our control? If the answer is a lot, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we shouldn't get too down when these things get taken away from us. These things were never in our control in the first place. So when these activities or routines that we relied on get taken away, what do we have left? A lot of time. In this extra time, we really need to pay attention to the routines and/or activities that we're getting into. Are they things that are helping us to improve in some way? Dusting off the long maybe one day list. It's funny how most of us had a maybe one day list. You know the one, those things that you seem interested in but don't have the time for. Look at us now, we have the time. A few of those maybe one day items probably can't be done in this quarantine. Even still, a large number of them can. Fortunately, I've been able to get to a long list of books that I've been meaning to read. I've also spent a lot more time on my flight simulator hobby. Not to mention all the added opportunities to talk to friends and family more often. However, with all of this extra time, it still seems like a lot of us are failing to get those maybe one day items. Instead of doing so many new things in all of this extra time, we find ourselves less productive. This is a very common psychological phenomenon known as Parkinson's law, which states that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So all of these items on this list continue to get pushed to another time since the essential work we have to do has taken up all the extra time that we had. There are some foundational elements of a routine which need to stay in order, such as the times we eat, the times we exercise, and the times we sleep. If either of these start to change from day to day, our routine will fall apart. If our discipline to maintain a routine starts to waver, those are the things we need to look at first. It might help to maintain some sort of a to-do list or schedule to keep ourselves accountable. Some people might not even know what to do with this extra time. This could be a sign of just how sunk into our repetitive routines we've been. What we need now is to dig deep to find out what we want to try out. What can we learn from this quarantine? One thing that I can tell you I've learned is that most of life is not in our control, but some key parts of it are. Have we had a healthy relationship with life lately? Have we been checking in to make sure that we're not getting too detached? There are two types of activities we can find ourselves partaking in. The first type is an activity that we undertake that doesn't rely on anyone else or anything outside of our possession. I'll call these isolated activities. The second type is an activity that we undertake as part of a community or in a special facility. This type of activity requires that we constantly have access to the appropriate facility, people, or tools/accessories. I'll call these dependent activities. Just because we undertake activities that have things and people that we rely on doesn't mean that we should eliminate these types of activities. I invite you to think of the following. If we are in full control of the isolated activities that we undertake, then outside events would never impact them. They would stay true regardless of what goes on around us. Is this the case for dependent activities? If the quarantine has taught us anything, it's that these dependent activities are not guaranteed. In fact, we didn't realize quite how lucky we were to have them. So many things had to be going right for these activities to actually exist. I'm by no means trying to say that we should eliminate these dependent activities. I'm saying something quite different. If isolated activities are guaranteed, but dependent activities are not, we should remind ourselves that the dependent activities are a privilege, not a right. As a result of having our social interactions, work, and/or fun activities take away or slowed down, we've also begun to realize just how busy our lives have become. Trying to squeeze in so much into our days is part of the Western hustle. We have to make ends meet and still have fun. Unfortunately, this hustle has been taking us away from the moment we're in, and we're having to deal with an immense level of stress/pressure. Every time I think about going back to the regular routine, it dawns on me just how heavy that will be. I hope I get to ease back into it. You can't run away anymore. A simple shift in our mindset can go a long way. One of those major shifts is to one of gratitude. Gratitude was always there to save us from the possibility of feeling pain from these things being taken away from us. And now that we're forced to stay home, away from these activities, we may start to realize that we've been running away from our own thoughts. Thoughts that were there to remind us that we were vulnerable and privileged, if only we would just listen. Somehow, deep down, we know our vulnerabilities and weaknesses, but we ignore them as a way to protect ourselves. In a sense, this whole quarantine situation feels as though the universe is telling us, now you have nowhere to run. Go ahead and face what you've been ignoring. After we look inside to find out our blind spots, we'll find ourselves a lot more content in our current situations. We never really needed very much to be happy, but somehow, somewhere along the way, we got distracted. We forgot exactly how great we had it, and we developed a habit of ignoring the insecurities, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities that have since gotten in the way of our freedom. Ignoring these things has meant that we've been blinded and distracted from our true reality, a reality that should focus on bringing out the best in ourselves and others at all times. Instead of choosing this path, we've been stuck in what's familiar and comfortable. It was only a matter of time before nature reminded us to wake up. There seems to be three camps of people. There are those who were already awake and didn't feel much of a change when we were asked to quarantine. On the other hand, there's those of us who were scared awake by the siren alarm that is quarantine, and those who are still in the process of waking up and finding it painful. We all feel some aspects of each camp to different extents. Like an anchor attached to our legs, our attachments to activities, materials, or different ways of life pull us down and cause us to struggle in times like these. Conclusion: when we come to terms with what's real and what's not real, we'll be able to settle in gratitude with whatever comes our way. At that point, we can look out at everything we have in our lives and view everything with a renewed view of gratitude rather than entitlement. This mandated quarantine is a difficult growing experience for all of us, but it's a wonderful opportunity. We've been asked to stay in the comfort of our own homes while an infection makes its rounds. We've been asked to play a very simple role in helping the world heal. While we're at it, let's heal ourselves too. Let's choose to be self sufficient and self motivating. These are difficult to accomplish, but we have time. Let's take a look at ourselves carefully and assess where we're at. Have we been living life to our fullest potential, or have we been detached from reality? Have we been able to see just how amazing and beautiful the world around us is? Just because it has changed doesn't mean there isn't still beauty there. The world was always beautiful, it is beautiful, and will continue to be beautiful. We tend to enjoy projecting our bias onto true beauty. Let's choose to take off those blinding glasses and see the world for what it is. If the world goes back to the way it used to be, let's try our best not to take it for granted. Let's agree to try and do less harm to it. Whatever we get back, let's be thankful and let's try to contribute to overall improvement wherever we can. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this article, you can find more like it at www.banafit.com. That's www.banafit.com.